Hello, everyone, and welcome to this lesson where we're going to talk about computers. Computers are something that I love. I was kind of surprised that I haven't done an English lesson yet where I talk specifically about computers. I did a lesson about technology. I did a lesson about schools. I did a lesson about the office, but I haven't specifically done a lesson about computers. So in this English lesson, we'll talk about computers. I'll cover about 4 or 5 of the same vocabulary words as I did in my technology lesson, but a lot of the words will be more specific to the actual world of computers and to computers themselves. As I said, I'm surprised I haven't done a lesson on computers yet because I love computers. I just love them. I'll talk about that more later, but anyways. So the computer is something that arrived in my life when I was about 10 or 11. And in English, you would say that I took to it. When you take to something, it means that you really like it. I certainly took to using the computer when I was a kid, and I still really like computers today. They are fascinating. You have 2 types of computers. There is something called a desktop computer and a laptop or notebook. Or if you own a laptop or notebook from the company called Apple, you might simply just call it a MacBook. But the general terms are laptop or notebook. I think we use laptop most commonly, but certainly you can see the difference. A desktop is a big computer that sits on a desk, and it's not portable. It's not mobile. You can't take your desktop other places very easily. But a laptop is very easy to take to work, to take home from work, to take to school. Laptops certainly are very, very handy. I'm happy because laptops now have batteries that last all day. The first laptop I bought many, many years ago, the battery did not last all day. So I always had to look for a place to plug it in. So that's another difference. A desktop computer needs to be plugged in to the wall all the time. And a laptop or notebook computer runs off of an internal battery. So very handy. Lets you go to the cafe with your laptop or notebook and work on some things. It lets you, certainly it has been nice for work to be able to go from classroom to classroom and take my laptop with me. Very, very handy. So 2 types of computers, laptop and notebook. I do want to mention here that I'm not going to talk about tablets or iPads or smartphones in this lesson. This lesson will just be about computers. I know many of you use phones more than you use a computer, but this lesson will specifically be about computers. When you look at a computer, you're looking at the screen or you're looking at the monitor, okay? This is for, I guess a screen would be the same whether it's a laptop or desktop, but with a desktop computer, you will have a monitor. I think we mostly call it the screen. So we have concerns though during this time that people are getting too much screen time. Screen time is the amount of time every day you spend looking at a computer or a smartphone or an iPad or tablet. And there's a bit of a worry that because so many people are working from home and because so many students are learning remotely or using computers, that we're spending too much time on the computer. And we refer to that as screen time. So you might read articles that say, kids are getting too much screen time during the pandemic. They're spending too much time on their computer. You might have a laptop that has a touch screen. Obviously, a touch screen is a screen you can touch with your finger. I do not own any computers with touch screens. I think I had one, but I never used it. I never actually touched the screen. But a touch screen allows you to control what your computer is doing by touching the screen. You can use your finger to actually use the computer. It's interesting how with our phones, we're used to using our fingers, but with our computers, we're more likely to use a couple other input devices. One of those is a mouse. So the mouse is an interesting thing. It allows you to use your hand to control what's called the mouse pointer on the computer. And I remember, I'm old enough to remember a time when computers didn't have mice. There were no mice and people just used the keyboard. And then old people had trouble learning to use a mouse. I remember that. I taught a night class once, and older people had trouble learning how to use a mouse. They couldn't coordinate their movement with what was happening on the screen. A laptop has what's called a touchpad. A touchpad is a small square in front of the keyboard that lets you move the mouse pointer around on your computer using your finger. So most computers, most laptops will have a touchpad, and you can use that in the same way that you would use a mouse. And then, of course, computers have a keyboard. This is something that smartphones and tablets don't really have. They don't have a physical keyboard. They do have a keyboard on the screen that you can use, but computers have a physical keyboard. Okay, there is it's called a peripheral, but we don't use that word very often anymore. But it's a device that you connect to a computer so that you can type. Students in Canada still learn to type in elementary school. We sometimes call it keyboarding. I was going to ask Brent if students in his school still learn keyboarding or typing. So in the Canadian school system, students still learn to type up until grade 8, which would be at around age 12 or 13. They still learn to type, or we also call it keyboarding. I actually, when I started teaching, the first computer class I taught, I also taught students how to type. That was a long time ago. They did time tests and all that fun stuff. Most students in Canada, when they are 12 years old or 13 years old, they're supposed to type 30 words per minute. So we time people. Most don't, but some do, okay? Some do type 30 words per minute. So those are the ways you interact with a computer. You use the mouse, the touchpad, or the keyboard. You might also have a webcam on your computer. If you own a modern laptop, it will have a webcam built in. There will be a tiny hole above the screen, and that's the webcam. And that's what you use when you use Zoom or Skype or FaceTime in order to talk to other people. If you have a desktop computer, though, you might buy this little thing, which is an external webcam, and you might use that to be able to have the same kind of interaction with people. Or maybe you use the webcam to record yourself or to do live streams like what I'm doing right now. Webcams are a camera that is attached to a computer or built in to a computer. So again, a laptop has a webcam built in. The English term built in means it's part of the actual machine. It's built in. Or you might buy an external webcam and it will be connected to the computer. If you like playing games, the type of graphics card in your computer will be very important to you. If you are someone like me who does a lot of video editing, the type of graphic card in your computer is very important to you. Most people, though, aren't aware of what type of graphics card they have. But gamers, people who play a lot of games on their computers, or people who do video editing like myself, always want to have a really good graphics card. This is the card that connects, it's where you connect the screen or monitor to the computer, and it's the part of the computer that makes the images that show up on your screen. So a very fast graphics card, or video card, that's the other word for it. I forgot to mention that. A fast graphics card or video card is always good if you like playing games. Your computer has two types of memory. It has system memory. This is memory that your computer uses when it is on. It also has a hard drive, which is a type of storage, and you could call it memory, that the computer uses when it is off, or sometimes while you're using the computer when it's on. So this is always hard for people to understand, but your system memory is the amount of RAM, that's the other word we use for it, that your computer uses when it is on. My computers have lots of memory. They have lots of RAM because editing video, especially the video where I did some special effects recently, requires your system to have a lot of memory. It requires that your computer has a lot of memory. And then your hard drive is where you store all of your information when your computer is off and when it is on. So it's good to have large hard drives as well. depending on what you use your computer for. But certainly if you start making videos, you need lots of storage space. So you want to have a large hard drive. So the brain of a computer. So your brain's in your head, right? The brain of a computer is the CPU, or the central processing unit. Computers have been getting faster every year since the year they were invented, and the CPUs have been getting smaller every year since computers have been invented. It's a rather cool thing, but that is what lets the computer do its processing, okay? You can also say processing, okay? I say it two different ways: central processing unit, central processing unit. I think processing sounds better, but I think I'm getting stuck between British and English, or an American pronunciation. But the CPU, or the central processing unit, is the computer's brain. And we use the word CPU, even though it's an acronym or a short form. We definitely refer to it as the CPU. So earlier there was a question about what CPU does your computer have. So a little bit about ports. When you connect things to your computer, often you will use a USB port. I think USB stands for Universal Serial Bus. A USB port is probably the most common type of port on a computer, although now they have also gotten smaller, and there are some computers that don't have USB port. They just have a Thunderbolt, or I forget the exact name of the port, Lightning port. So the USB port is where you would plug in your mouse, you would plug in my microphone is plugged into a USB port. My camera is plugged into a USB port. So you can hear me say plug in. You plug things in to a USB port. On my bigger computer, the keyboard is plugged into a USB port as well. Some computers also have what's called a card reader. Thought I had a card here. I guess I lost it. But we have small cards. Some are called SD cards. There's various names, but these are the most common type of card that I use. It's called an SD card, and I put it into a card reader or an SD card reader in order to get my files off of it. When I go outside to make a video, I put an SD card in my camera, I make my video, I come into the house and I put my SD card into the card reader of my computer, and I transfer the video files from the SD card onto my hard drive. And then I can start editing them. So most computers have an SD card reader or a card reader, and that's where you can read the cards that you have. Not everyone has a printer anymore, but a long time ago, everyone had a printer. This is what you use when you want a printout, when you want to print something. I still have a printer, as most of you know, because I use it to print out the words and phrases I teach on my other YouTube channel. But I also have a printer just because Jen and I have a farm, and we need to print out invoices sometimes. When we sell flowers, the person wants a paper copy of the transaction, which we call an invoice. So we still have a printer. There are laser printers and inkjet printers. I have a laser printer, but there are inkjet printers as well that print in color. Let's see here. Speakers. Some people have speakers connected to their computer. You can see really little speakers here. And we call them computer speakers because they're smaller and they're made to be connected to a computer. So I used to have speakers connected to my computer, but now I just use headphones. I actually use earbuds, not like these. These are AirPods. I don't have wireless earbuds, but I do have earbuds that I use. You see them every week. Mine are the less expensive kind that still have a cable attached to it. And so with your earbuds, you plug them in, and then you can hear what you want to hear. So if you want to listen to music, or if you want to watch a movie, you would hear the sound from the computer through the speakers, through your headphones, or through your earbuds. Now, again, I use the word AirPods. AirPods are a specific type of earbud that's made by the Apple computer company. So there are some names that are used by one company, and we start to use them universally, because I know some students have earbuds from a different company, but people still sometimes call them AirPods. I think people get confused a